It's very important that you, as young people, understand what's going on. They're playing a shell game today in Washington you can't believe. Social Security, read Chapter 5 of my book. It's the biggest Ponzi scheme in the world. It's taking from one generation, giving to another. We have many politicians elected, lockbox, trust fund. Don't believe it. Doesn't exist. There is a pencil entry, about a Social Security trust fund. It was raised with a separate tax, FICA, supposed to be earmarked in a separate fund, but basically spent as fast as it came in. Why? And this is the problem with our whole budget system, because every Congress can change the budget to suit their needs. And what are the needs for politicians? Look at the White House. More concerned with being reelected in a second term than doing the right thing. He had the Simpson Bowl Commission. Why didn't they make it mandatory? Or why didn't President Obama say, that my commission, we should follow it? No, because he didn't want to go first. But who went first? Congressman Ryan. You heard about him, right? Very brave thing he did. Raised the level of the debate. It's still not there. We still don't know what the right mix is, short term or long term. But one thing I can tell you, most solutions, probably all solutions, are too short term because of the politics. That the numbers that you're hearing are not the right numbers. What are you hearing these days? 14.3 trillion. What is that? That is the debt that is bonded. Treasury bills, treasury notes, savings bonds. And not all of that is held in the public. About 40% of it is now in the Social Security Trust Fund and some in the Medicare Trust Fund. Why? They removed the money and put an IOU in there. We don't pay that interest out currently, but we accrue it. And it gets paid out when people get their benefit checks. And that's why the book is important, because it reviews the history of the budget process. Guess what happened in 1968? Lyndon Baines Johnson, in order to disguise the cost of the very unpopular war, Vietnam, came up with something called the unified budget. But guess what he did with that? He then took the surpluses of Social Security and reduced the deficits in those years, and it's been happening for the last 40 plus years. So every time you get a deficit, it's already been reduced by the annual surplus. In other words, what Social Security collected through FICA taxes, more than it paid out that year, that's what was used to reduce the deficit. So if you try to add up all the deficits, you will never get the bonded debt. But there are many other tricks. And one other is that we're not using the accounting system that the Securities and Exchange Commission imposes on publicly traded companies. Why? To protect shareholders, protect their assets. What system are they using in the budget process? The cash basis. The cash basis, all that tells you is how cash is moving. And if I want to play games with it, it's easy. I defer writing a check, or I defer a payroll. One year, I remember, to balance the books or to make it look better, they had 53 weeks of the military payroll instead of 52. If you play that game forever, you just are dealing with nonsense. So that's another issue that we have to deal with. We have to get generally accepted accounting principles used in the budget process. What else is wrong with the budget process? It is one big omelet that's scrambled. What do I mean by that? The budget includes the trust funds, government-sponsored enterprises like Fannie Mae, Freddie Mac, Pension Benefit Guaranty Corporation, Resolution Trust Company, the Post Office, and 20 others. Most of them losing money, but they can sell bonds with the full faith and credit of the United States of America. So their losses are mixed in there somewhere. Plus you have your operating accounts. This is not right. They're not equivalent economically. We should have a separate budget for trust funds, a separate budget for government-sponsored enterprises, and a separate budget for everything else, but then you divide that everything else into capital items and regular. And then you have the accounting system that the Securities and Exchange Commission mandates on publicly traded companies. The debt has been estimated by many people to be well over $60 trillion. The numbers are hiding in plain sight. All you have to do is follow what I say here. Go on the Treasury Department's website to the publications and go get the annual statement for the fiscal year September 30th, 2010. Our fiscal year is ending pretty soon. But 2010, and go to the footnotes, and guess what you find? The first big number that you have is publicly held and intragovernmental debt represented by Treasury bills. There's your 14.3 trillion today. That's going to be 15 trillion by the end of this fiscal year. It's about 14.3 and over right now. But look at the next line. Medicare, parts A, B, and D for drugs. 22 trillion, 813. That's what actuaries compute. These are not numbers you pull out of thin air. And that number, 22 trillion, 813, believe it or not, this number was actually 15 trillion greater in 2009. Why? Because for 2010, the Treasury decided to take the benefit of Obamacare. And nobody has proven that those benefits are going to come true. So really, the debt is not 51 trillion, as I say here. It's probably 51 trillion plus at least another 10 trillion, over 60. But look at Social Security. This is the money that we owe people who are alive today, who are entitled to the benefits, and it's got to be paid out in the future. And these are present value numbers, by the way. That's another $8 trillion. And then what else do you have? Civil service pensions, military pensions. They're not funded. That has to be paid out. Now, if you really want to know the debts of the United States of America, you got to add the bonded debt, Treasury bills, etc., and this debt, and you get to over 60 trillion. Now, that's going to be your burden in the future. Unless somebody is going to say we're going to renege on Social Security, or we're going to, not give Medicare, your generation is going to have to deal with this. What I'm trying to do is get it on the books so we can understand the real dimension of the problem. If you don't know where you are, you cannot plan for the future. So let me conclude by saying you have an immense responsibility to understand what's really going on. What you're hearing today on Capitol Hill is the political debate. No matter what they do, and I believe they will raise the debt ceiling, but they're not going to do the job to bend the curve on the national debt the way they should. And as I said in this article, raising the debt ceiling does not solve the fiscal crisis, because our national debt is a ticking time bomb. All it does, raising the debt ceiling, is reset the clock on the bond.